Today, we're looking at a major flashpoint on the global map. It's a place where geopolitics, military threats, and the entire world's energy supply are about to collide. This is the story of the Hormuz blockade, and what's at stake? Well, it could impact everything from global trade to the price you pay at the pump.
So here it is, the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it's just 21 miles wide, a tiny channel of water separating Iran from Oman and the UAE. But you really can't let its size fool you. This little passage is one of the most critical shipping lanes on the entire planet. It's the only way to get by sea from the oil-rich Persian Gulf out to the open ocean.
And that begs a really critical question, right? What happens when a vital global artery like this is suddenly squeezed shut? The consequences, they're not just local. They are immediate, and they send ripples across the entire world. To put it all into perspective, think about this number, 20%. Historically, a full 1/5 of the world's oil and natural gas has to navigate through this single strait. That is a staggering amount of the energy we all rely on every single day, all of it channeled through one tiny, vulnerable passage.
So that gets us right to the heart of the problem. A super high-stakes standoff where two major powers are drawing their lines in the sand, or I guess in this case, in the water. The positions here just couldn't be any clearer. On one side, you've got the U.S. Military Central Command, and they're saying their blockade is going to target all ships serving Iranian ports. And on the other side, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have issued this stark warning. Any foreign military vessel that gets close will be met with decisive force. It's a classic case of military brinkmanship. Now, the official U.S. position is trying to walk a really fine line. The claim is that the blockade is very targeted and that it won't get in the way of neutral transit passage. The idea is to isolate Iran without shutting down the entire Gulf. But, in a waterway this crowded and this tense, that is a very, very difficult needle to thread. And then you have Iran's response. And wow, there is zero ambiguity here. Iran's Revolutionary Guards are signaling that they see any enforcement of a blockade as a direct act of war. These aren't just political statements. These are direct threats that have basically turned the entire strait into a powder keg.
And of course, these threats aren't just happening in a vacuum. They have created this massive ripple effect, leading to what is basically a global shutdown in one of the world's most critical waterways. So, okay, beyond all the political talk, what does this confrontation actually mean for the ships, for the tankers and the cargo that are the lifeblood of the global economy? How has all of this actually affected traffic?
The impact has been absolutely staggering. Commodity carrier crossings through the strait have plummeted by 90% compared to normal peacetime levels. Just let that sink in for a second. 90%. This isn't just a slowdown, it's a near-total collapse. Shippers are avoiding the route almost entirely.
And the numbers, well, they really show the reality of what's happening on the water. Between March 1st and April 13th, only 376 commodity carriers even made the passage. And of those, the vast majority, 244 of them, were oil and gas tankers. And most of those are actually heading away from the Gulf. The flow of goods has slowed to just a trickle.
So with the main exit pretty much blocked, an enormous amount of oil is now just stuck. It's in limbo. It's been produced, it's been loaded onto these massive tankers, but now it has absolutely nowhere to go. And this has created a huge floating stockpile, effectively held hostage by the whole conflict.
And if you're wondering about the scale of this stockpile, we're talking about more than 180 million barrels of Iranian oil. That's how much is currently loaded onto ships just sitting there, inside or just outside the Persian Gulf. It is a record-level amount of oil, just waiting. The supply is there, but the supply chain is completely broken. So all of this leads to the inevitable question, right? Who pays the price for this disruption? The economic fallout is just immense, and it's definitely hitting some countries much harder than others. So where was all this oil supposed to be going? Well, the vast, vast majority of exports from the Persian Gulf are destined for one continent, Asia. Entire nations there are incredibly reliant on this exact supply line, which is now being systematically choked off. And what's interesting is that the dynamics of this trade have been shifting lately. For a long time, China was the biggest customer for Iranian oil, but a recent U.S. sanctions waiver opened the door for other buyers to come in. So now nations like India have become key importers, which makes them incredibly vulnerable to this blockade. Their entire energy security is directly tied to the fate of this strait. So when you boil it all down, what you have is a huge portion of the world's energy supply being held hostage by geopolitics in a waterway that's just a few miles wide.
It's a really stark reminder of just how fragile our interconnected global systems truly are.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. With so much at stake, and with the entire global economy teetering on a knife's edge, what happens next?